Thank you again for taking a little bit of time from your schedule and being able to participate in our Whittier Spotlight. We're very proud of the work that we've done, and we know we have a journey still yet to come, but we are very passionate about what we're doing. So we're hoping to share some of that with you today. So thank you again for spending time with us. To get us off and rolling, we want to just take a second here and have the Mesa Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Andy Forlis, do an intro. I'm fortunate enough to work in Mesa Public Schools. We are a preschool through sixth grade elementary school in our district, and she has been leading all kinds of new charges in our district, and I'm just super proud and happy to have her here. So Andy, it's your turn.
Well, thank you so much, Andrea. And I love looking around the screen and seeing so many familiar faces. Love seeing our Mesa Community College partners and then our leaders from Mesa Public Schools. That is, they're on the journey, have either two great big leaps into the journey, a toe in the water, wherever we're we are at least on the path. And so I'm excited for you all to be learning from and with Whittier Elementary today. Whittier is definitely on a path to re-image and reimagine what teaching and learning can look like for all children, using a personalized learning approach. And that is really the big idea of what they're doing. And so if they're going to reimagine what educational opportunities for kids look like, they need to be thinking about what are their systems and structures throughout their school. So you are going to be hearing about that. As a district, Mesa Public Schools is very large. We have 85 schools. We have just short of 60,000 children and 9,000 employees. And so creating change is oftentimes slow going. But when you have the right leaders in the right places with the right momentum, anything is possible. And so I've put out a challenge to our leadership team that 50% of our schools will in some way be a part of the next generation workforce. That is the charge that is being led by ASU's Mary Lou Fulton Teacher College. So I'm excited to see the energy in the room. And as you think about this, I think through the lens of the superintendent, knowing that the work that Whittier Elementary School is doing is directly related to our strategic plan, our strategic goals, and what our community has identified are the most important attitudes and skills in our students that they will have when they graduate from Mesa Public Schools. And as educators, you know that begins in preschool. So we have to build children's skills and resiliency beginning in preschool and nurturing that throughout their educational career with us. And Whittier is doing exactly that, not only for students, but you're going to hear stories about how this is working with teachers. So I am more than excited to be able to support the great work of Whittier Elementary and give great amounts of permission to them to continue to do the great work that they're doing. So welcome. Thank you for listening to the story of Whittier, and love to be thought partners with you in any way so that together across the state of Arizona, we can change outcomes for kids. So back to you, Mrs. Sims.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay.
We really appreciate you being here. I know you've got a busy day, so thanks again.
I'm in 2 Zoom meetings at the same time. Okay. Bye, guys.
So as we begin talking today, I just want to acknowledge who is here in the Zoom room. And today, obviously, I'm here with you as the principal and leader of our school. But we also have Kirsten Campbell, our Title I specialist, Chrisanne Florence, our instructional coach, Elsa Dean, and Carlila Orange are 2 of the teachers from our 4-6 team. So when we are talking, I want you to be thinking that we're specifically referencing a 4th through 6th grade change on our campus. So we've done quite a few things that we'll talk about along the way, but be thinking about that. I also want to do a shout out to the rest of our teammates who are with all of our students today so that we could be here with you and share the journey and the great work that's happening. So without any further ado, let's get right into some meat and potatoes. Thanks, Chelsea. All right. So at some point, we're going to reach our time limit, and where there's more information that you'll want. And you can achieve some of that more information desire by you going to our spotlight on the ASU page. I know we'll share the PowerPoint. It's been linked in there, but it's also linked in the agenda on the ASU page. And you can always reach out to us. That's something that I know that, excuse me, Chelsea will also add in later on, maybe some contact information, or we'll share out in some way, shape, or form. So we'll get to that. All right, thanks, Chelsea, for going on to the next slide. We begin virtually every conversation around here, if it has to do with instruction or change or innovation, whatever we want to call it. We begin everything with our why, and the Whittier mission is inspire, empower, and make a difference. And as we begin thinking big vision, where do we hope to be? This H.A. Giuliani quote really pulls it all together. That's a very strong personal why for me, and how I operate, but also how I bring others into the fold of my thinking, so that we can ensure that we have the same vision. And that last statement there, our job is to help students prepare themselves for anything, is the foundation of the work that we're doing and building agency in our students. So let's go on into the next slide so we can learn a little bit more about the Whittier demographics and some of our programming. And anybody on this call, you all come from a different lens, whether I know I saw Ton from MCC, as well as other principals in Mesa and other people. We all recognize that everybody comes to this conversation from a different lens, but it's important for me to frame the work that we're doing around our demographics. If you're familiar with Mesa, Arizona, we sit on the farthest west or northwest corner of Mesa, just bordering Tempe at the Riverview area. Always say, I think, by Bass Pro Shop. And just to the north of us is the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. So our demographics have changed. I've been here for 4 years, and in 4 years, our country has changed, the needs of our state have changed, and the needs of our community, Mesa Public Schools and Whittier Elementary, have changed. So you see evidence of that flexing a little bit in our data. We are 71% Title I. 50% of our population is Hispanic. We have a large portion of students from the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. And one of the stats that I find very unique is that our single family home dwelling has changed from 58% to 24% in the last few years, indicating a lot of shared residencies, as well as people losing their home or not being able to rent. So their needs have changed, and how they ask for help looks different. But it's important, as we talk today, that you're thinking about the kind of students that we have. We have colleagues that say, that's great, but not my kids. Or that's great, but what about those kids? Or that's great about blah, blah, blah. But for us, Whittier is leading this charge in our area because we believe that all kids deserve access to high quality instruction that is different than what their parents experienced and what they experienced a few years ago. We believe that in order to do better for them, we need to rethink our own practices. And we do that from the lens of what we hope for them in the future. So that's a little bit about our school. And I want to kind of spend the next few slides talking about our journey, what we started with, where we've made some compromises and kind of gone along the way. I think it's also important to note that this does not happen overnight. So when I first came to Whittier, I was super excited and knew that I wanted to make some changes to the way that public education was perceived, and what were we doing for our kids. And I feel direct responsibility to that. So over the course of time, we began to reimagine that, and we've had shifting staff and shifting pedagogy and all kinds of things. But ultimately, where we decided just over a year and a half ago is that we would be a personalized learning environment through inquiry-based teaching and learning. And we've learned that from our exposure to other places like Zahara's, but also Knowledge Works, Spark, and Kyrene, and our connection to ASU has really helped us to make some of these changes. So this was not done in isolation. It is not done by one person, and it's just kind of a thought bubble that continued to grow and grow and grow, and now it's in action. Last spring, we were really trying to figure out the best way to tackle some of our student population. And, when you look at the numbers, it's one thing, but when you look at actual kids, it's another thing. And thinking about our kids and behavior and combinations of students, and we were really grappling with what's the most equitable way to provide quality education. And we were in a conundrum. So that's when we committed ourselves to the teaming aspect and the next education workforce, and we built our team. That was a great choice on our part, because I cannot imagine doing any of this without a team. So go ahead and flip to the next slide, Chelsea. What we would have had at that particular time were 2 lead teachers, as well as 4 certified educators and 4 teacher candidates from ASU, and our 1 special education teacher that served primarily just for 6. That was for about 160 students. And I know some schools are bigger, some schools are smaller, but that's where we're at. And we were super excited about what that could mean for us. So we began to imagine, and the next slide is what we came to. And we were so jazzed because we were going to do 2 houses. We were like, this is going to be awesome. If you think about this, think about those numbers: 1 lead teacher, 2 contracts, right? 2 MPS contracts. And we've got our 2 teacher candidates with 80 kids. The ratio, I think that in my notes I have, it's like 16-1. That's amazing for a 4th through 6th grade environment. And just to note here, our 4th through 6th graders are combined in their learning. We have mixed grade level environments. Some are 4 through 6, some are 4-5, some are peer 6. But it was very important to us for them to be mixed with their peers, because we wanted to foster learning in different ways and across the different demographics that we serve. And the best way to do that was by mixing our grade levels. So we were going to have these 2 amazing houses, but then unfortunately, in the springtime, what else happened? We had our first COVID closure, and we never came back to school after, March 6th, when we went on spring break. And we could not even potentially compromise or conceive what it would look like in August at that point in time. So we just kept forging on, thinking that it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And it wasn't really. So that's okay. So we made some compromises, and we had to take some different action steps. And through that, we've learned a lot. So I'm going to tell you about that on our next slide. When we made those compromises, we literally, it was heartbreaking, because we were so personally attached to what we were doing, and we had gotten buy-in. We talked to our parents, we talked to our kids, we brought it to our entire community. We had already made significant changes to the way we taught reading and writing, and we were really just looking at what's next for us. So that's okay. What we did is we became very nimble, and we went through several versions of what you can see here. This current teaming model is where we're at in January, but it looked different in August, September, and even December. So here we are. We have 2 lead teachers in person with 2 other certified educators and 3 of our Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College teacher candidates, and they are amazing. Just to note that real quick there. We have a certified teacher in remote, as well as 1 teacher candidate supporting our kids there. Our SLD teacher is working both of those environments in a really dynamic schedule, and that's been a unique challenge as well. We still have about 160 students, only 100 of them or so in person as well, and the rest of them are in remote. So what this created for us is a very connected team. They're very close. They're very kind to each other. They support each other. They work very hard in order to make sure that there's been solid communication, and that was not without bumps in the road along the way. But what we've gained is a great collaboration, shared responsibility, and the opportunity to really dive into some very specific content. In our schedule, we chose to parse writing out and teach it separately from reading. And it's actually been a beautiful thing because it provides the writing the attention it deserves and connects it to the other content areas. The other changes that you don't really know by looking at that image have to do with the way that we navigated our schedule, and it's just one of the things that everybody's had to do. So we won't adjust that or spend time there. We will talk specifically about that highlighted deep dive later as we go. So awesome, Chelsea. We're going to go on to the next slide. I hope that my timing's okay, and the amazing Kirsten Campbell is going to speak on this next slide here.
So COVID aside, we realized that when we started on this journey that we were asking teachers to do really hard work. I'm the Title I specialist here, and I've been here for 4 years with Andrea. So we had a very clear understanding of where we were starting from at Whittier, and that this move towards personalized learning was going to be a monumental shift for our staff. As a leadership team, we wanted to find ways that we could support this change. We knew it was going to be too heavy of a lift for just one teacher to do on their own. And the easy thing would just to revert back to what they've always done and what they are familiar with. So we decided we needed to shift some basic structures at our school in order to do these new things. One of those was creating a team of educators that were all on the same path together for personalized and deeper learning. They also had a shared responsibility to educate the same group of students. Our team, as we've gone through this, we have consistently faced challenges, and we've had to address them and solve them. But I think that's also created an opportunity for a tremendous amount of growth and progress this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Kirsten. So what did our teams do? Yeah, I mean, you can't just make a team, right? You have to actually do some pretty awesome things, and moving that rock and shifting it was a big lift. So we started with instructional practices, and honestly, we began that journey last year. We started that early on and moving to a workshop model. But I think it's important for me to say something at this point that we didn't just dive in and go, oh, we're just going to change our instruction and whatever happens, happens. We had lots of systems in place at Whittier that needed to be adjusted. So when we talk about this, I want you to think about our tier 1 instruction in relation to a multi-tiered system of support. So we are taking into account what tier 1 looks like, then what does tier 2 and tier 3 look like from that point forward, and not just academically, but for our social emotional needs of our students. So those instructional practices aren't just about doing good on a test, really and truly. We are developing a whole child who believes in themselves, sees themselves as a learner, and through that can make decisions about their own learning and ultimately preparing them in ways that we can't even imagine what they'll be able to do by the time they're in high school and beyond. So one of the practices that we found to be important in getting them to be those kinds of thinkers and advocators is to infuse project-based learning. And you'll get to hear a little bit about that from our teachers here in a minute. But that is a priority for us and something that we make time for every week. Also, none of this is possible without community building. So we've done things like community circles, inclusive small group practices, as well as one-on-one conferencing, and not just one-on-one conferencing to talk about your running record or your writing piece. It's about conferencing with a child. How are you feeling? Where we talk about maybe zones of regulation. We talk about goals that they have for the future. We are embedded with our kids one-on-one in every way that we can. The goal here being that we would create real change. So I want our kids to move on to junior high and expect this kind of environment from their junior high teachers and their campus. I want our teachers to believe, because they've seen the benefits of teaming, that this is the best way to do that. And I want the teacher candidates to truly have an opportunity to say, yeah, teaming was better. And it was hard, but it was better than being by myself. So that creates real change in our community. It changes public education here. It changes public education around us. That's a picture of our amazing team. I love them so much. And maybe Carly can give a little shout out to Huck as we go. And because he's also an important part of our social emotional learning here on campus. And I know the next slide has to do specifically with some of our instructional practices, and our very, very dedicated and much needed instructional coach is going to tell you a lot about that here. So thank you, Chrisanne.
Hopefully not a lot. But this is where my heart is, and this is why I'm here at Whittier, to help with this shift in instructional practices. And teachers have made significant shifts in the past 2 years because we're using a workshop model, and we're not teaching reading, writing, math, and science, but we're instead nurturing readers, writers, mathematicians, and scientists, and empowering them with choices and autonomy so that they can then make decisions about their own learning and then go forth to make decisions that impact the world around them, to see that they have that power. So the teaming aspect of this is so important because it's such a complex process. It's much more difficult to teach those kinds of things, or more complex, not difficult, more exciting maybe, than planning an isolated whole group lesson that you put in a filing cabinet and you pull out the next year. But it builds the identity of the learner. And if only one teacher on campus was doing this, then that would be one isolated pod of experience where these kids have, and then they would go to the next year or to the next class and not have the same feeling. And so it would kind of be useless to do that. So teaming is such an essential part as we nurture a culture of learners here at Whittier.
Hi, I'm Elsa Dean. I'm one of the teachers at Whittier. I've been here for 4 years, so it's been really exciting to be a part of the process and watch Whittier change from where it was at the beginning to where we are now. So we have learned a lot about our first year teaming and working together. There are a lot of things that we didn't realize at first, or a lot of things that we didn't think about at first. But as problems arose and we came together to solve them, everyone has become better through this process.
I'm Carly LaOrange. I'm third year teacher here, and I do the reading. Elsa does writing, so we kind of work pretty close together, and we've worked together for a while. It's been fun. So one thing that we know is that our relationship with students is super important to us to be able to meet their academic and their social emotional needs. I want to feel connected and close to my students, and I know that they crave and want that attention from an adult who really knows and understands them as well.
With this new model, we quickly saw some behavior issues popping up here and there as students were testing boundaries and trying to figure out this new learning environment that they were in. And we noticed some patterns that came along with these issues or these behaviors. It was interesting to see how some students responded and reacted differently to different teachers across the board. And then we realized consistent procedures across the classes would be necessary and would be the first step to nip these behavior issues in the bud. We also had the opportunity to observe each other's classrooms and reflectively identify procedures or things that we need to focus on. And we came up with some consistent procedures that students would know that they need to hold in every classroom, no matter which classroom, which teacher they were with. So making sure that these procedures are consistent no matter where they go gives students a sense of security and comfort. Students walk into every classroom knowing what to expect.
One of the best things about teaming is working together to support all students. We can brainstorm and share ideas about how to reach a certain student. The students consider all of us their teachers, so it's easier to redirect across campus. And I'm excited for next year already having this in place going forward. And since Andrea gave me permission to do a little Huck plug, I think he fits in with the behavior issues. Huck is a therapy dog here on campus. He's been trained through the Mud Agrees program with the district, and he works and helps students with social emotional learning, the animal-human bond that we have. He can help calm people down in situations that are tense and just kind of help kids learn how to treat and respect animals as well. So he's been super fun to have on campus and to be able to train. So shout out to the Mud Agrees program for that awesome opportunity. Moving on to the deep dive. Deep dive is our name for PBL and Genius Hour. And it's based on our essential question, which this year revolved around community. We knew when we began envisioning this 4 through 6 learning environment that we wanted to have a time for deep dive, for deep inquiry and project-based learning. We did some work over the summer as teams and thought about what we wanted deep dive to look like. Of course, this works better in theory than in practice sometimes, and we had to work as a team to be able to figure out how to launch this, what it would look like, and how to work out the grouping.
Part of social studies was learning about communities. We talked to our students about our school community, what it looks like, and what kind of things that students saw as issues around the campus. After we had discussed these issues, we divide them into groups. The classes brought up the same issues across the board, which was really neat to see them line it up and be in agreement with each other without even having them discuss it all together. The 4 topics that were discussed were recycling, school spirit, welcoming students to Whittier, and a news station for our school announcements. We then gave them cool, like jazzy, exciting names to get the students pumped and interested into these different groups. For example, we renamed our recycling group Operation Save the Turtles.
Students were given voice and choice about which project they wanted to be a part of. They all met in the gym, socially distanced, of course, and Elsa and I talked about each group without mentioning teacher names to ensure that students would not be swayed by a teacher and would instead pick a topic. Students were then given a survey asking them what deep dive group they would like to be a part of. We tried to honor all students' first choice, and only 2 students ended up being placed in their second choice spot.
After that, students got to go into their deep dive and start working. The students came up with ideas to solve problems to make the community stronger. Then we got to actually work about doing something about these issues and set up plans and steps that they wanted to take to start fighting and start solving these issues.
Not too long into the journey of team teaching, we really missed the strong communities that we had built in our previous classrooms. And we realized we needed a way to consistently manage some of these things for students. What teacher would call home if there was ever an issue? Who would be doing parent-teacher conferences? Did students feel there was someone they could turn to if they felt they needed help with something? We needed someone who was in charge of these things. Something that I had said at the beginning of the year was brought up when we were planning for this presentation. We have one student in particular who was presenting many behaviors that needed attention. I stated something along the lines of, it would be really hard to have him all day. The teaming aspect helps to alleviate some of this pressure on one teacher. This student, now that I've been able to build my relationship with him, is one of my absolute favorites. And this is thanks to our teaming model that has helped me to be able to build and solidify the relationship that I have with him and share the responsibility of having him in my class.
It was important that we put students with teachers that they felt they had a connection to or a relationship with, because we wanted to combat and fight those feelings of being overlooked or being lost in the crowd, which we thought would be a common issue with having such a big group. So this was our way of responding to it. In order to do this, we created surveys for both the students and the teachers to help us place students with a teacher they feel like they can connect with and have a good relationship with. Building homerooms became more beneficial than we thought by helping with the mechanical issues like Carly was mentioning earlier with parent-teacher conferences and grades, and with relationship building.
Homeroom time is some of my favorite time of the week. It is the time that we as teachers get to go outside of our content areas and stretch kids in different ways. There's been a special focus on community building. This is to ensure that the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students are able to work and be in classrooms together. We have also done some awesome STEM activities during our deep dive time, social emotional learning, and worked on personalized learner profiles that Chris Ann will talk to you about now.
We created personalized learner profiles with the input from students and teachers to help them set long-term and short-term goals and provide a place for reflection. And on the next slide, we've included some links to our process, to our progress on these. We think that nothing's ever a done deal, but this is kind of where we are now if you're interested in taking a look at those. Next.
And obviously, there's lots of work to do moving forward, but specifically, we're going to maintain the 4-6 houses that we have, or that theory, and just adjust and adapt based on the way that our student and teacher population looks next year. We're going to move our 2-3 pilot into full implementation of personalized learning in a combined environment. And we're piloting a K1 environment next year as well. So pretty excited about that. We'll continue to build agency in our students and really focus on how we develop assessments that do that. And then we're hoping to grow our community partners, because now that we've realized how amazing this whole team approach is, we know that we need more people on our team, but we also know that that's not always going to come in the form of a teacher contract. So we have to look at how we might access people in a different way. So that's kind of exciting. We have a really amazing video to show you that highlight some of our students. And there's 2 more teachers, one of our remote teachers as well as one of our TCs, that's going to share a little bit of their insight as well. So as that's playing, be thinking about your questions. I know the chat, from what I can see, looks very, like, it doesn't look like a lot has happened there. So I'm really excited about being able to take on some of those questions and see what we can answer for you. So enjoy our kids, and then we'll regroup after.
My favorite part of having a team of teachers is because, well, you don't have one teacher, so you can have multiple teachers, and it can kind of help you since they know like a lot about the different subjects that they teach.
What's my favorite thing about having a team of teachers? Well, we just don't have to sit around the same teacher. I mean, it would be fine, but we get to interact more, and the teachers get to interact more. They work more like a team, because they get to share each other's ideas, and the students get to share each other's ideas with the teachers, and they all just go into one big group and discuss meetings and everything.
The reason I also love a team of teachers is because then I know I can go to any of them.
I don't think there's really anything hard except at the beginning, getting to your classes, just understanding where the teacher is and how you can get to that teacher.
I love deep dive, but how I chose Wildcat TV was because I've always wanted to just I always like to be number 1, or just I like to be a star, and I like being on camera.
After the presentation, I knew immediately that I wanted to be on School Spirits. I chose it because I always wanted to make a big imprint on the school, and it felt like it was just the deep dive that has been waiting for me.
What I like best around homeroom is that you can spend time with your teachers and have fun things with them. What I like about best homeroom is that you get to interact with different teachers, but at the same time you have with that one specific teacher that you get to know about.
Okay, so when we did the PLPs, I think the biggest thing that the kids got out of that is that they all have goals, and they're motivated by different things, and they all have different interests, and that just in general they're different. I think by having a team of teachers supporting our kids through this PLP, it shows them that that they have such a wide range of support people who will help them achieve those goals.
I just think that this teaming model has made me grow as an educator so quickly and so comprehensively too. And so I just get to constantly build my teacher toolbox with everything I love from the other teachers, and I'm always learning about different styles, and I find a lot of styles that I connect with really well that's easy for me to take on. But then I also see styles that I've never heard of that challenges my own pedagogy as a teacher, that I get to learn more. And I also see a lot of connections with my college classes. And so something I learned in one of my ASU classes, I'm bound to see that across one of the many teachers that I get to work with. So I just feel like I'm constantly making connections between what I'm learning in school and then actually seeing that playing out in the classroom.
Thank you for sharing, Carly. All right, Whittier, that was so fantastic. It's always such a pleasure learning from you. Folks, we have about 8 minutes for some Q&A. So please feel free to pop your questions right into the chat, and the team will respond. Go right ahead.
Chelsea, I'm going to take, I'm okay with wait time, but I also am going to take a question from the previous session while people are processing for a second. And one of the questions I thought that the lady asked a question about the dynamics of teaming, right? And how is that, how's that working for us? And I think that we would be very naive to think that teams are always going to be best buddies and love all of those things. But I can tell you that there's always growing pains. And I always talk about teams like we get together and we're not exactly sure how to navigate. And then we get to this place of kumbaya and then we realize we are really annoyed with each other. And then we have to go back and we have to find out why and figure out what to do next. And then we build some systems and procedures around how do we PLC. And then you're back to kumbaya, which is like a really exciting place to be because it's good for them and it's good for kids. That work was not done without thinking about our commitment to equity for our students, but also for our teachers and building teacher agency and coaching them to have hard conversations, whether it has to do with a gender issue, like maybe they're feeling that something's happening because I'm a girl and they're a boy, or whatever it happens to be, age. We don't have a ton of long-term experience in our house. Elsa is the longest veteran at 4 years. So it's not about I have more years of experience than you. So I commend our team for being very natural through that process and growing through it and developing in different ways. So they've done a fantastic job and it has not always been easy. So I know there's a couple things in there. I'm scrolling.
One question has it made other teachers want to jump on board and do this work? I think that's a big one.
Yeah, sure. And that absolutely. So that basically we initially brought in a second grade teacher and a third grade teacher, and they met with us yesterday to share their plans for next year. And I am so impressed with giving them that space to be able to process that out and think about what they would want it to be. What are their hopes and dreams, right? And they're able to capitalize on that. And then we proposed a plan for K1 and talked to some teachers, and they were like, "Count me in, coach. I'm ready to play." So I think that as we prove that it's acceptable, capable, our students are capable, our teachers are capable, and it's exciting work, that the rest of our teams will jump on board. But we're just starting in small pockets in K1 and 2, 3 for right now. So Samantha, you asked a question about rethinking the K1 piece. You know what? I'm going to really rely on my teachers for that, and not because I don't have the answer, but I kind of don't actually. I'll just be honest about that. I don't have all of the answers as we move forward. What I envision happening is getting a wall knocked out in between two rooms and having an open space that can be closed as well when needed, and two teachers, but servicing approximately, I would think about 40 students, and try to keep our numbers about 1 to 20 with instructional aides, and then them building units of study around reading, writing, math, science, and social studies that really are capitalizing on foundational skills. We 100% teach foundational skills. We're a workshop school, but we also have guided reading groups, and we have intervention materials, and we provide those supports. So I envision all of that being part of it. But honestly, we turn a lot of things over to our team and ask them, what do you think and what do you want? And then we build a schedule to make it happen. I would say that Kirsten and Chrisanne build a schedule. That's not my strength. I just let people vision and then they find a way to make it happen. It's pretty awesome. Interest in reading, writing workshop. Yes. Jan, I would love for you to spend some time with our teachers and our team. Same questions Samantha has. So I honestly, I don't know, maybe Kirsten or Chrisanne, you guys have more input that you'd like to add about the K1 vision. But if we're going to give our kids agency, then we have to give our teachers agency too. And we've really just said, hey, let's start brainstorming. We will participate. They will come on board immediately, and they'll start participating in personalized learning experiences, and they'll be part of a network team with ASU as well. I know there's other schools in our district that have done similar concepts with a K1, and we want to make sure we give them access to each other. So that would help for sure. Thank you, Todd.
I think we can talk a little bit, like when we started 4-6 last summer, they worked really hard at identifying the standards and looking at the standards and how fluidly they flowed between the grade levels, that none of these standards are really done in isolation. And as we up our tier 1 instruction and have less tier 2 to deal with when our tier 1 is better, that those students who are in first grade who are really struggling can be nurtured with peers in the K1 combo. It doesn't have to be, just in the first grade teacher doesn't have to deal with this big idea, these big, what do I want to say, like this big variety of levels.
Right.
Share that responsibility together, and that's something that they're excited about, and creating some continuums of what learning looks like as they progress that they can share with students and have them have that voice with.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We learn from each other, and if we do it as grown-ups, then the kids can too. So yeah.
Develop those student-teacher relationships over a number of years. That was a big thing for us, is that our K1 students now will have the same 2 teachers for 2 years, our 2-3, our 4-6 for 3, and just thinking about how deep and how impactful of a relationship you can have over that amount of time.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to be a junior high teacher for a number of years, and I had students for 7th through 9th grade because of the content that I taught. And I have the kids that have stayed with me and connected with me have continued to do that because of the impact we were able to make over a 3-year period of 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And I find that to be very compelling for a grown man with children of his own now to be able to say, you made a difference because of this, this, and this. We need to be giving that to kids as early as we can. So it is very exciting to see the relationship building that has happened and the trust that kids have. When they feel safe, they will learn. And we have to teach them to feel safe, not just with one grown-up, but with lots of different grown-ups, but also how to navigate to find the ones that they're most comfortable with. So we're very, I would say, holistic. And I know it sounds, for some people, they're like, that's so great and good for you, but how do you like balance all these things? I think that I love instruction. I understand standards. I was very committed to learning targets, success criteria. I believe that we have to have a plan, and a well-laid plan creates for great experiences for kids. So this is not, John Hattie's done a lot of work on when students have control of their learning, there's only a 0.2 effect size. But when you bring in inquiry-based teaching and learning, and you set those structures and you use targets, you actually get as high yield of the standard effect size, and your instruction is much more powerful, just like when we would just do straight old direct instruction. But we just have to provide more experiences. So thank you guys so much. I don't know, Chelsea, do you need to say anything before we go, or are we just good to go?
Only that, please, if you have additional questions, use the community feature and go ahead and message Andrea and team. And Whittier, thank you so much. It's always so wonderful to learn from you. Thank you.